Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to construct a basic magic ritual. What are the basic components or items that you need in order to create a magical ritual space that you would use in any sort of magical working. So now I'm going to start to list off and describe all of those different components that you will need for your magical ritual. The first thing you're going to need is some kind of altar. This is just a small table that you have in front of you, such as the ones in the background here. It's a table where you can put all of the other items that you're going to need for the working. And the altar is really like your work space. It's where all of the action happens, where you're going to be manipulating different objects in order to symbolize the manifestation of your intent. The four corners of the square or rectangular altar are often seen as representing the cubic square of the world, because as you manipulate the items on the altar, you're manipulating the physical world in which the magical working is taking place. The next thing you're going to need is candles. You don't have to go over the top with this. I've found that using simple tea light candles is enough, but you want to be creating a certain type of mood. In the room, the temple space that you're using, if you can turn the lights out and light some candles and do it all by candlelight, it creates a much more magical atmosphere. But the reasons for the candles are not only aesthetic. The candle represents the fire of the spirit, and the presence of the fire of the candle flame represents this presence of spirit or a certain type of spirit in the ritual space. If you want to take the candle component of the ritual a step further, you can choose colored candles to reflect the kind of intent that you want to have behind the working. Whether that's a color scheme that you take from candle magic, or whether you use correspondences such as in the Golden Dawn. Choose a colored candle that is going to be significant to the working, that is going to have a color that somehow represents the intent or the theme of the working. On the theme of creating a certain type of atmosphere or aesthetic, you're going to need some incense. The sense of smell can be a very powerful thing. When I went to India a few years ago, one thing that really struck me when we walked through the marketplace was the smell. All of the spices in the air. And so whenever I smell the smell of spices, it immediately evokes that feeling of being back in India. Similarly, I burnt a lot of Nag Champa incense when I was doing a lot of Enochian workings at a certain stage in my life. And now whenever I burn Nag Champa incense, it makes me think of that time in my life when I was doing a lot of Enochian magic. So a particular smell can transport you to a completely different world, a completely different environment in your mind. And you're trying to do the same thing with the incense in the magical working. Choose an incense which corresponds to the particular type of energy or spirit that you're trying to call upon. If it's a planetary spirit, choose a planetary incense, for example. But make sure that the type of aroma is one which fits with the overall kind of vibe that you're trying to create in the ritual. Traditionally, the incense was seen as the offering to be made to a particular spirit or deity in a ritual. So think of it in those terms. By burning the incense, you're trying to entice a certain type of spirit or energy to enter the room. Another thing that you can do to create a certain type of aesthetic in a ritual is the use of colors. I've spoken about this a bit in the context of candles, but you can take the same color scheme and apply it to many different items in the ritual. So you might want to use an altar cloth that has the same color, or if you have a talisman that you're charging or consecrating, you might want to have those same colors on the talisman, creating, again, a theme to the working. Another thing to consider is robes. So if you think about what particular types of clothes represent, think about what it's like when a barrister, for example, puts on their robes, their gowns and their wig. They're no longer an ordinary person, but they are a prestigious lawyer. Or if you graduate, you put on your graduation gowns. If you join the military, you wear a uniform. And when you put that uniform on, you're not just a civilian, but you're a soldier. So changing our garments can change our personality, and it can signify in our mind a change in the kind of role that we're performing. And similarly, if you want to be a magician, you want to use magic, you can dress like a magician in order to reinforce that belief in your mind. And the way to use that is with the robes. Now, people can go over the top with robes. There can be all sorts of different robes for different grades in a particular initiatory system with lots of different complex symbols on them. It's not really necessary to go that far. All you need for a magical working is a simple robe. I've got two robes that I always wear, a black one and a white one. I use my black robe for practical magic, and I use my white robe for high magic. And you can find robes pretty easily on Etsy these days. But sometimes people like to wear coloured robes, depending on the type of working that they're doing. Say if they were summoning Barzabel, the spirit of Mars, they might want to wear a crimson red robe, for example. Another thing that you should have in a magical ritual is a material basis of the working. As I've said, this could be a talisman, which represents a materialization of the result of the working, or sometimes if you're doing more kind of Wiccan spell work, there can be different ingredients that you're mixing together, such as herbs or what have you, in order to signify the spell work and the weaving of your intent. That I would say is another important thing to have. I'll talk more about that in my next video though, when I talk about the 4 main magical tools, which are traditionally considered to be the most important. And of course, once you've set up the working, don't forget to banish before and after the working, and also once you've banished at the beginning, cast the circle before you do anything else. So those are the first steps after you've set up the ritual. In the ritual itself, it'll be useful for you to have certain types of conjurations, and I'll talk more about that in my next video, as well as the 4 main magical tools that I mentioned before. And I'm also going to talk about the art of correspondence, using tables of correspondence to make sure that all the different components of your ritual match each other in terms of the theme and the symbolism of them. So stay tuned for that one. I hope that you enjoyed this preliminary video on constructing a basic magic ritual. If you did, please subscribe. Every subscriber helps me. If you've got opinions or feedback or comments or questions, please leave them down below. Otherwise, thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.